Okay, so like everyone's talking about the housing market, right?
Yeah,
And how crazy expensive it is to even think about buying solo these days.
for sure.
But what if, and hear me out on this, what if there was a way to actually make that dream happen?
Okay.
Not just like scraping by, but actually enjoying the ride by teaming up with like your best friends or even your family.
You're talking about co-ownership. It's kind of a buzzword these days.
Right. It's like the ultimate adulting hack. And the cool thing is, it's not just about affordability.
Exactly. It's like this whole movement back to this idea of communal living.
Yes. Like remember when we were kids and sharing a room didn't seem like a big deal?
Right.
Maybe this is like the grown-up mortgage paying version of that.
And honestly, there are some really compelling reasons why it's gaining popularity again.
Right. Like we've got two awesome sources for this deep dive, by the way.
Okay.
One is this super insightful article that lays out all the ins and outs of co-owning.
Cool.
And the other,
Yeah.
a transcript from a webinar led by this guy, Cody Anderson.
Oh, okay.
He's the CEO of a company called Tomi, which is all about, you guessed it, making this whole co-ownership thing a breeze.
Interesting. So you ready to dive into this?
Let's do it.
All right.
But before we get ahead of ourselves, we got to address the elephant in the room.
Which is,
How do you know if this whole co-ownership thing is even right for you in the first place?
good point. It's not for everyone, that's for sure.
Right. Like it's a big decision. You're talking shared finances, shared living spaces.
Freedom responsibilities.
Exactly. It's a lot. Luckily, our sources have some guidance for us on that front.
Okay, so where do we start?
Well, Cody, from the webinar,
Yeah.
he's got this whole finding your gems thing that I kind of love.
Linking your chat.
Yeah. He's all about figuring out your own motivations and expectations before you even think about mortgage rates or who's doing the dishes on Tuesdays.
So it's like a self-inventory for wannabe co-owners. I like it.
Right. Figure out what you absolutely need in a home ownership situation and what you're willing to compromise on.
Makes sense. It's like laying the groundwork for a solid partnership.
Totally. And speaking of partnerships, it probably goes without saying that choosing your co-ownership crew is kind of like the most important decision in this whole process.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. This isn't just picking a roommate for a year. We're talking about potentially sharing a roof and everything that comes with it for years, maybe even decades. Exactly. It's a big deal.
For sure. And honestly, it's probably one of the areas where people get tripped up the most.
Right. Like you think you know someone
Yeah.
until you're arguing about whose turn it is to empty the dishwasher.
Or who used up all the hot water.
Ugh. Don't even get me started. But the good news is our trusty article actually dives into some pretty eye-opening stats about just how popular this trend is becoming.
Oh, really? Lay it on me.
Okay, get this. In 2023, a whopping 62% of homes were purchased by more than one person.
Wow, seriously. That's huge.
Right, and hold on to your hats because this one's even wilder.
Okay, I'm ready.
77% of first-time buyers weren't flying solo.
So basically, if you're buying a house these days, chances are you're doing it with someone else.
Pretty much. It's like the buddy system, but for mortgages and property taxes. I like it. So it sounds like co-ownership isn't just some passing fad.
Not at all. It's becoming a way of life.
It's a whole new world of shared kitchens and maybe some compromises about whose art goes on the walls.
Right. Like you're basically choosing who you want to be financially and domestically tied to for, well, a pretty long time.
Exactly. And both of our sources really hammer home the point that finding the right people to share this journey with is like 90% of the battle won.
Okay, so how do we choose wisely? What
Yeah.
should we be looking for in a potential co-owner besides, a love for the same throw pillows?
Okay, so first and foremost, you got to make sure you're financially compatible. I mean, this is a huge financial commitment we're talking about.
Right, like you don't want to be stuck with someone who's constantly late on their rent or like forgets to pay the utility bills.
Exactly. But it's not just about having similar incomes or credit scores. You also want to be on the same page about how you approach money in general.
Oh, that's a good point. Like, are you a saver or a spender? Do you prioritize experiences over material things? That kind of stuff.
Exactly. But here's the thing. Financial stability is crucial, but both our sources also emphasize the importance of lifestyle compatibility.
Right. It's like you could have the most financially responsible person on the planet, but if they're like a total neat freak and you're more of a, shall we say, organized chaos kind of person, that's a recipe for disaster.
Exactly. You want someone who respects your space, shares similar values, and ideally has a communication style that meshes well with yours.
So basically, it's like finding a roommate, a business partner, and maybe even a therapist, all rolled into one.
Huh. Something like that. But hey, if you can find that unicorn co-owner, someone who checks all those boxes.
Then you're golden. But let's be real, even with the best intentions, conflicts are bound to pop up at some point, right? Like, who does the dishes, who takes out the trash?
Oh, and don't even get me started on whose turn it is to clean the bathroom.
Ugh, the bathroom. The ultimate co-living battleground.
Right, which is exactly why both our sources stress the importance of having a rock-solid co-ownership agreement in place.
Okay, so this agreement, it's like the rule book for our co-ownership adventure.
Exactly. It outlines everyone's rights, responsibilities, and expectations from the get-go.
And hopefully prevents any major blowouts down the road.
Exactly. It's about setting clear expectations and having a plan for how to handle disagreements when they inevitably arise.
So what kind of stuff should this agreement cover? What are the essentials?
Well, for starters, it's crucial to clearly outline the ownership percentages.
Right, because things can get tricky if one person puts down a larger down payment or covers more of the monthly expenses.
Exactly. You want to make sure everything is fair and transparent from the get-go. And speaking of transparency, another crucial aspect is outlining responsibility breakdowns. Who's handling maintenance? Who's in charge of paying which bills?
Okay, so it's getting down to the nitty-gritty of co-living.
Exactly. And as much as we hate to think about it, life happens, and sometimes life involves people needing to move on.
Okay, so even if we're all excited about this co-ownership adventure, we need to have a plan for when someone wants to sell their share or, move in with their significant other.
Exactly. And that's where having a clear exit strategy outlined in the agreement is crucial. How will you determine the buyout price? What happens if one person wants to sell but the others don't? These are all important questions to address upfront.
Right, because trying to figure that out in the heat of the moment when everyone's stressed and emotional is a recipe for disaster.
100%.
So we've covered choosing our co-ownership crew. We've talked about the importance of a solid co-ownership agreement. But what about the elephant in the room? The actual finances of buying a house together.
Yes, the financial nitty-gritty. We'll dive into that right after the break.
All right, so we're back, and we're ready to tackle the financial side of co-ownership.
The million-dollar question, or, well, multi-$100,000 question, depending on where you're looking to buy these days.
Right. Like we've talked about finding our dream team and setting ground rules, but how do we actually make this whole buying a house together thing happen financially?
Well, like with most things in life, there are a few different paths you can take.
Okay, so lay it on me. What are our options?
Well, in the webinar, Cody starts by talking about the simplest scenario, which is, of course, if you and your co-owners are lucky enough to be sitting on a pile of cash.
Yes. The all-cash dream team.
Exactly. No mortgages, no interest rates, just pure homeownership bliss.
Sign me up for that dream team. But let's be real, that's not the reality for most of us.
Definitely not. Mortgages are still the name of the game for the vast majority of homebuyers.
So let's talk mortgages, specifically in the context of co-ownership, because I feel like there are some unique considerations there, right?
Absolutely. And again, you have options. You could each pursue individual financing.
Okay, so that means we're each responsible for qualifying for our own mortgage.
Exactly. The lender looks at your individual financial picture, your income, credit score, debt-to-income ratio, all that fun stuff.
So more independence, but maybe less buying power.
Exactly. You might not qualify for as large of a loan on your own, which could limit your options, especially in a competitive market.
Okay, so that's one option. What's the other route?
The other option is to explore joint financing.
Joint financing. Okay, so instead of applying for separate mortgages, we all team up and apply for one big one together.
Exactly. It's like the financial equivalent of Voltron, combining your powers to form a more powerful borrowing force.
I love it. So what are the advantages of going the joint financing route?
Well, the biggest one is that lenders often see a group of borrowers as less risky than a single borrower.
Okay, that makes sense. So there's safety in numbers, even when it comes to mortgages.
Precisely. And because you're pooling your financial resources, you might qualify for a larger loan, which gives you more options in the housing market.
Okay, so bigger house, better location.
Potentially. And here's another bonus. Lenders often offer lower interest rates on joint mortgages compared to individual ones.
Oh, okay, so we're talking potentially saving thousands of dollars over the life of the loan.
Exactly. So there are definitely some compelling financial advantages to joint financing, but of course there are also some potential drawbacks.
Right, because let's be honest, nothing in life is perfect, especially when it involves sharing money with other people.
Exactly. And Cody doesn't shy away from that in the webinar. He's very upfront about the fact that with joint financing, you're all jointly and severally liable for the mortgage.
Okay, so time for a quick legal jargon breakdown. What exactly does jointly and severally liable mean in plain English?
It basically means that if one person fails to make their mortgage payments, the lender can go after any or all of the other borrowers for the full amount.
Oh, wow, so it's a big commitment, like we're all in this together, for better or for worse.
Exactly. So if you're considering joint financing, you need to be absolutely certain that you trust your co-owners financially.
100%. Choosing your co-ownership crew wisely has never been more important. But let's say we've navigated the financing maze, we've got our co-ownership agreement in place, and we're holding the keys to our shared kingdom.
Time to break out the champagne.
Right. But then reality sets in. We're not just talking about splitting the cost of a mortgage. We're talking about sharing a living space, potentially for years to come.
True, it's easy to get caught up in the excitement of house hunting and picking out paint colors, but the real work starts after you move in.
So how do we make sure this whole co-ownership thing doesn't turn into an episode of like a real estate reality show gone wrong?
Well, both our sources are big proponents of proactive communication. Like, don't wait until there's a problem to start talking about it.
Okay, so we're talking regular check-ins, house meetings.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be anything formal or stuffy. Cody from the webinar actually shared this hilarious anecdote.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Hit me with the anecdote.
So apparently, Cody and his mom, who co-own a property together.
Wait, his mom. That's awesome.
Right. So they have this standing meeting every morning in their hot tub.
Hold up. A hot tub meeting. That's amazing.
Right. It's their time to just like connect, talk about any issues related to the property, and generally stay on the same page.
Okay, I am stealing that idea. Like, who's going to argue about whose turn it is to mow the lawn when you're neck deep in bubbly relaxation?
Right. It's genius. It just goes to show that finding creative solutions and keeping those communication channels open is so crucial in a co-ownership situation.
Okay, so key takeaways. Choose your co-ownership crew wisely. Get everything in writing with a solid co-ownership agreement, and never underestimate the power of communication, even if it happens in a hot tub.
You got it. And hey, maybe this whole co-ownership thing is bigger than just real estate, you know?
Oh, what do you mean?
Like, what if we could apply these same principles, collaboration, shared resources, open communication to other aspects of our lives?
Wow, that's a really interesting thought. Maybe co-ownership is just the beginning of a more collaborative way of living.
Exactly. It's about redefining what's possible when we work together.
I love that. Well, on that note, thanks for joining me on this co-ownership deep dive. It's been real.
Anytime. Until next time.